Even Money Marketing presents The King's Court.
Welcome back to The King's Court. We are a talk show that is geared towards engaging new fans to the sport of kings and intriguing the existing fans and bettors that are the backbone of the sport. We're here to recap quickly the awesome weekend of racing that we saw with two Kentucky Derby preps in the Arkansas Derby Division 1 and 2, as well as a fantasy prep, as well as a key handicap division spar off. We had some awesomely impressive performances that are really going to be some stepping stones into the next events. And I think that that's a really good way to get started today. Jose, I know that you've got some inside information around what jockeys may be going where and what some stake schedules look like that have either just come out or are coming out soon. Can you give us some insight about what we can look forward to next?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to first dive into what's going on over in California. So Santa Anita announced that they're going to try to open up by May 15th with the hopes of having their big stakes day on June the 6th. They'll run the postponed Santa Anita Derby. They're going to run the Gold Cup at Santa Anita as well as the Santa Anita Oaks. It's going to be kind of those three big races surrounded by four other stakes, two Cowbred stakes, two other smaller stakes sprinting on the turf. So we're going to get to see a lot of our favorites back in play. Flavia and Pratt, of course, Bob Baffert, who had a huge weekend this weekend over in Oaklawn, winning both ends of the Arkansas Derby. And then down at Churchill Downs, they're going to be opening up May 16th. Their first big stakes day will be May 23rd. They're going to run the first edition ever of four stakes. That would be the Tepin, the War Chant, the Blame, and the Shawnee. The Shawnee is supposed to be featuring Monomoy Girl, which would be really awesome to see her come back. And they're also going to run the Matt Win that day, which nothing's being confirmed, but I believe we're going to see Maxfield in there. And it's offering 17 points total, 10 to the winner. And then the big day at Churchill will be June 27th, which will be Foster Day, where they will also hold the Regret, the Fleur de Lis, and the Bashford Manor. And we are going to get some additions to the jockey colony this year as well. Jose Ortiz announced that he'll be there on opening day. And I've also heard rumblings of Joel Rosario showing up and Kendrick Carmouche. So a lot happening in both Kentucky and Santa Anita as we're finally getting things to open up again.
That is awesome insight. And I know I, for one, am really intrigued to see what that colony looks like. And I wanted to take a couple of seconds and thank everybody that followed us along this weekend. I know we were pretty active on Twitter and social media. If you don't follow us, be sure that you tune in at Even Money MKT, featuring the King's Court and all of those things if you haven't already. But we wanted to take a second and touch on that. We got a little bit of feedback around some of our action. And if you guys don't know our Big Money Nate, he is known to crush some wagers.
Cash and big tickets.
And he is big ticket guy. We gave out Don C's keys this weekend. We saw a $14,000 payday on a daily double, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. But I felt that it was a really good opportunity after speaking with the guys to kind of clarify that this is a group of guys and girls that are fans of the sport. And we happen to be fans that bet. Obviously, we absolutely enjoy the wagering side of things, but it's important that we don't forget that we're fans first. And if there was no gambling, we would still love the horse, and we would still be very intrigued by all of the pageantry and all of the drama that this sport can offer. And in fact, one of the ways that we've kind of done that, I wanted to let Jack talk a little bit about our Owners Association that we created. It's a fantasy league that's a typical buy-in like you would do at a DraftKings or any other non-wagering aspect of the world. Jack, can you talk a little bit about our fantasy league?
Yeah, I can. So it kind of started with Cody. He texted or called me. He was like, "Hey, you want to do a Kentucky Derby fantasy league?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm down. Let's do it. Like, sounds like a lot of fun." And he was like, "Yeah, I'm thinking we just do a draft and we kind of, do a random order and go from there." And I kind of have this pet peeve against drafts, and so I was like, "I'm down for it, but I don't want to do a draft. I want to do an auction style. I think it's more strategic. I just think it's a better way to go about it." So we set up kind of basically a point system with the Derby heavily weighted, the point being that if you did win the Derby, you'd be tough to beat. And then we had kind of the prep races that are worth actual Kentucky Derby points also be worth points in the league. You had a salary cap of 150 real dollars, and you had 5 roster spots, and you actually could go over the salary cap, but similar to the MLB, we had a luxury tax. So every dollar you spent over the $150 in salary cap actually costs you $10. A couple people went $1 or 2 over. Jose miscalculated and went $15 over. So he actually is due a $300 contribution to the league, while the others are due a $150 contribution. Everything was going great, and then we kind of know what happened. We hit the coronavirus pandemic, and it was like, what are we going to do now? So we didn't change too much. Everybody kept their original rosters, kept their original contribution, but everyone got an additional few roster spots and some monopoly money to fill those roster spots. So we now essentially have a evolving group of teams, stables, whatever you'd like to call them. And if someone wants to nominate a horse for auction at any point, they can. They go up for auction. Whoever in the group's interested hops in, bids what they're willing to bid to, and the winner adds the horse to their roster. Everyone now has 10 roster spots, and it's pretty interesting. We've kept it alive, which I was happy to do. I was in a couple other fantasy leagues for golf and different sports that kind of just blew up when all this hit. Luckily enough, we've kind of continued racing, and we've continued the fantasy league. I think the auction and salary cap aspect of it make it a lot of fun. Yeah, like you said, it's one of those things where we've got money on the line, but we enjoy it more than anything just for the sport of it, the competition of it. Another thing, I know this weekend we had races from 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago going back and forth in the group chat, enjoying watching those. That's something where financial interest, there's absolutely none of it, but sometimes it's great to just watch a stretch battle of a couple of legends and argue whether photo finishes are legit or not.
Songbird won.
Jack, thanks for giving that rundown. And one of the most intriguing things to me about that fantasy league has just been the different strategies and insights that we've got. I know that anybody watching this show has probably seen a new trend about this $3+ million maiden that's lurking out there for Bob Baffert, and he's actually one of 2 unstarted maidens that got nominated in our chat in our league yesterday that actually went up for auction. The other being a quality rolled colt by the name of Big Mel that has been one of his breeze partners throughout the summer and is pretty highly thought of as well. So I think it's interesting. We've got everything from Charlatan, Nadal to I personally own the top 4 finishers in an allowance race on the undercard of the park. So
Of course he does.
I've got some work to do, but I'm all about that up and coming horse. And I think that it's really interesting to see some strategies and insight play out across the country. And I think that it's super fun and would encourage anybody to reach out and learn more about it and how maybe you can do your own. There's still plenty of time between now and then, but there is not plenty of time left on the show. So let's take a quick break and then come right back. And we're gonna dig into our race analysis, the race reviews, and kind of talk through some trips, who really impressed us, who didn't impress us so much, what our thoughts are moving forward, and then we'll close with our highlights from the weekend. Welcome back to the King's Court and our review of this weekend at Oaklawn Park, some of the great prep races that we had, and we're ready to dive in to our quick review and analysis of each of the graded stakes races this last weekend, starting with the fantasy stakes. You had some really troubled trips in some instances, and then eventually you saw 2 fillies separate themselves by, I believe was quoted, 20 lengths in front of the remainder of the field. Nate, tell us, what'd you see, man?
Well, they went fast. They definitely went fast early. 22, 45, 109. I was very impressed with Swiss Skydiver, pressing the pace and able to go by Venetian Harbor in the stretch. That was ultra impressive. Venetian Harbor ran big, though, running into those fractions. I just give all the credit to Swiss Skydiver. I actually had it the other way, so I did not cash a ticket on the fantasy, but, as a fan of the sport first, Swiss Skydiver, impressive performance. So
You say fan of the sport. Speaking about fan of the sport, Jack, you mentioned whenever we were prepping for this show, they're gonna send this filly overseas, right? You're kind of into that. What does that look like? What is that for sport?
Well, that's the kind of report out there from trainer Kenny McPeak, is that he has a desire to send her over to what is a postponed / delayed 1,000 guineas. So I guess probably for most of our viewers, what is the 1,000 guineas? I'm sure plenty will know, some will not. It's it's the first of the three classics in England for 3-year-olds. The 1,000 guineas is the filly edition, and the 2,000 guineas is the colt edition. It's a really prestigious race. It's held in Newmarket, and it would be really interesting. I mean, she's clearly a top class dirt horse, but going and competing against Europe's best is it's a tall task. And I commend Kenny McPeak for trying things like that. I love to see it. But I think the filly would have a great shot. I don't know. Like I said, she would be up against the best 3-year-old turf horses in the world. And that's tough to do when you're on, pun not intended, but their turf. And
Jack, correct me if I'm wrong. He's done this before, hasn't he? He brought over a 3-year-old.
So I was,
he stumbled out the gate, right, and went down?
No, it was actually worse than that. I think it was Daddy's Little Darling, I believe. And
did she get loose or something like that?
Yeah, so he had Olivier Pellier, who's a great French rider, on her, and then this was actually in the Epsom Oaks, which is the second leg of their kind of classic trio.
Okay.
And Epsom's a very unique course, and what they have to do to get to the start is gallop the whole 1.5 miles backwards. So they basically gallop to the start the opposite way they run the race. And amidst the fillies galloping to the start, a massive thunderstorm struck. And I'm kind of laughing about it because all the horses were okay. And there was a massive thunderstorm, and she was running down a hill towards the starting gate, and she absolutely bolted. She wasn't being ponied to the start. They generally don't pony horses to the start in Europe. I don't know if that was always the plan, not to pony her to the start, but she wasn't being ponied to the start. She bolted with Olivier Pellier, and he was going full speed downhill towards the starting gate. And there's actually an amazing video where he reaches over, he takes his foot out of the stirrup, and he jumps off of her. And it's unbelievable to watch because he's going all out, and he takes his foot out of the stirrup, he jumps off. And she luckily pulled up when she got to the gate, but she was scratched from the race. And so, credit to Kenny McPeak for saying, I want to give it another go. Obviously a different horse this time. I don't know if he'll pony her to the start or not. But it was amazing to watch. And it'd be fun to see. It's an incredible race. And, she's obviously an incredible horse, but that's different level type of stuff.
Yeah, and for anybody that's interested in that awesome video that Jack referenced, we'll make sure to drop that link in the comments of the video on YouTube and any of our social media. Jose, man, we loved Harvey's Little Goyle. And
we sure did.
What a trip did she get. My goodness, I said many explicatives, worse than Don C on the last King's Court, where was me and my
He was right.
What was he was right. Combatant did not have a very good showing. He was correct in there.
Just an allowance source.
Walk me through that trip though. What'd you see? A ton of trouble in the stretch, and that's what I'm worried about.
Just kind of trouble the whole way around. As we talked about, she's a really, really big, good moving filly, and she never ever got a chance to get into her stride. So for me, she's definitely someone I'll play back because I really believe that she has a lot of talent, and I think she'll get to showcase that with a lot cleaner of a trip. But just from start to finish, out the gate, she was in a lot of trouble, got shuffled back, was in trouble around the first turn, kind of got in a boxed-in situation around the backside and just never got into a comfortable rhythm. And then from there, the race was over. The two, Venetian Harbor and Swiss Skydriver, they might have ran too big of a race for her to even, be relevant anyway, but she never got her fair shot, and they spurted away from her early. And I think we're going to get the right odds that we want on her next time, and I haven't given up my faith on her, that's for sure.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and take nothing away from those two fillies that kick clear. I know that we were spotting Jack. You love Venetian Harbor. She ran her heart out, and Swiss Skydiver certainly in my opinion, may have separated herself in the Oaks division. I will, we'll see what comes of it from there. But as it stands today, I think that we're there. We had some charlatan guys. Nate, you were a charlatan guy. Transitioning over to the first division of the Arkansas Derby. That was pretty impressive, man. What did you see?
Well, I'm just glad Martin Garcia, held on. Just please don't fall off, right? Charlatan was the best, best in that race going in, and obviously is coming out. As you saw over the weekend, the track at Oaklawn was pretty much a conveyor belt for speed, right? Basin, from the outside post got over. That was nice. Santana put him in a good spot, but you're just not catching Charlatan, not the Baffert freak here. I know myself and Even Money Don C both agreed on that one too. So
Even Money Don?
Yeah, ultra impressive, but not unexpected. So
Don, what'd you see?
I thought Charlatan did what was expected. He got an easy lead, just galloped around there and just rolled home. I think it's going to be tougher, definitely going forward. I don't see him as a mile and a quarter horse. And I think if he faces any adversity at all, he'll probably won't run that well. So I think he's super impressive with what he did this weekend and what he's done in the past. But I think going forward, if he's going to try to make the Derby, I think he's up against it as far as winning it. But I think he could be a heck of a miler, sprinter even going forward. But he definitely impressed me still. I mean, he didn't do anything wrong at all. But I generally think he's a play against for the Derby.
I can agree there.
That's a hot take. Jack, Joe?
Yeah, well, I think one thing to credit him on, and if you watched the previews that we kind of gave and the opinions we gave, I was sort of against Charlatan just because I with Cody don't totally think he's like a classic distance horse at this point. Maybe that's just being stubborn. But one credit to give to him in terms of the speed is I was watching the race with a few people, and he gets that 2-length lead, and the people were frustrated saying, "Oh, what? Is no one going to go with him?" Well, I don't think any of those horses had the speed to go with them. So He deserves credit for that. They actually could not go with him. He's that much faster than those horses. So the riders could have rushed a horse. They could have done whatever they wanted. He's that much faster. So he deserves credit for that. The reason he got an easy lead is because he's wicked fast. But like I said, maybe it's being stubborn. I, like Cody, like Nate, think he's a play against the Derby. I just think, I think as great as he was at a mile and an eighth, I don't think he'll be quite as good as a mile and a quarter. And I think his best is going to be, like Cody said, sprinting and at a mile.
Yeah, if he gets someone that'll go with him, and match that, we'll see the true Charlatan at that point. So.
Yeah, I think that I agree there. And closing thoughts on the Arkansas Derby, at least from my side of things, the first division of it, I was much like Jack and Cody mentioned, I was wildly impressed with his early speed. The fact that he was able to separate himself, and then he was very handy. He came back to Martin Garcia going into the far turn, and then whenever he felt some pressure, I know D'Or made a move on the outside, and Basin started chasing, and he was so easily in front of them that up to that point, I was very, very impressed. Where I started to knock him was that last 16th of a mile. And I know that there's been some comments that he was green or he was learning still. But at the end of the day, to me, he hasn't shown any sign of greenness whatsoever. You don't run 105, 106 buyer speed figures as a green horse. That doesn't happen. And he's running holes in the wind straight as a whistle. And I think that whenever you saw him get into that classic distance, that last 16th of a mile, he was starting to find some uncharted waters. And you saw him come out a couple of pass and switch leads a little bit late and kind of look like a horse that may be getting tired. A horse that did not get tired was Nadal. What did we think about him?
He's your Derby winner at this point, as far as from the Baffert barn, in my opinion. Ultra impressive. I believe that pace was slightly faster in that race. Great horse.
Jose, you were spot on. You said Florent Geroux was getting to the lead. It's not how I thought he was going to get to the lead, but my goodness.
That's horse racing. Florent Geroux on the outside post with the more speed in the race is cutting over. He's getting to the front, and he's going to try to park him. You can just guarantee that every time. But Nadal, he was super impressive, as we said. I mean, the horse is big, muscular, beautiful. I mean, he's really, really impressed me with everything he does. He's got a great motion. He never slowed down. He just kept finding and finding. And I really like the race that King Guillermo ran as well. He ran a huge race. I mean, he sat off the pace, took a little bit of dirt, tipped out, tried to run him down. He just didn't have enough horse to get by him. But that's a horse that's definitely going to be heard of for, I think, a little bit time coming.
I was wrong about King Guillermo. I thought he'd be off the board. That was impressive. I mean, he ran right with him. So
he's just a hard try. He can run on the turf, the dirt.
He's got heart.
He tries hard, that horse. I like him a lot.
Good horse.
Very good horse. I think to me that whenever you go to analyze some trips and look at that again, the thing that impressed me was that horse had such a switch. I mean, it was like Rosario just kind of drops his hands a little bit, and that horse just gears down. And you actually saw it in places that you don't see it. I mean, in between the quarter pole and the eighth pole,
the stretch
once, and whenever he switched leads,
gone.
He just sat on him. And then whenever he asked him just inside the eighth pole, whenever he actually let him feel the stick, he immediately put 3 links against horses that we're talking about. I mean, I don't want to get it out of context there, guys. I mean, you're talking about the Louisiana Derby winner. You're talking about the Tampa Bay Derby winner. You're talking about good quality graded stakes horses that this horse was able to just spurt away in a gear switch that you don't see going 1 1/8 that often at that point in the race. And so I was very, very, very impressed. I know that we had a couple of other opinions about it. Cody, you had a very strong opinion about Nadal. What was your thoughts? Were you proud of what you saw? Do you think he moves forward?
I was very proud. I thought that when he hit the front, he was kind of waiting on horses to get up to him. And I loved his race. I liked King Guillermo's race. I thought sitting behind horse, like everybody said, he ran a big race, showed a lot of heart. And I think the one that's really under the radar is Finnick the Fierce, the one-eyed horse.
Yeah.
I think that nobody was really expecting him to jump up there. And, I mean, he made a move for a little bit that made it look like he was going to give Nadal a run. But
yeah,
in general, I think Nadal, I put him in the group with Tiz the Law and Authentic as probably being the 3 most impressive to me that I think will get the distance and are the most talented. So
yeah. I'm not going to lie. Whenever I watched the race live, I thought that Finnick the Fierce was the classic 1 1/8, this long shot closer that we see in all these races that just comes and picks up the pieces. Whenever I watched the replay and realized that he was actually sitting 2 or 3 links off of it, he impressed me more. I think he may be somebody that we hear from moving forward. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of a shame he's not getting all the popularity that a horse like Patch got when he was 3. Because Finnick the Fierce, I mean, he's just been right there every race so far. And he's headed towards being in the Derby, I'd say. I mean, he's got 25 points, I believe. And one-eyed horse to run that big of a race in that race, he was like 30-1, I think. I was super front.
60-1.
Yeah, he was 30-1 on the morning line, 64 off odds.
Yeah, I think Ray Hernandez did a great job with them, and it was really a big race for him to run 3rd.
Yeah, I agree with you. Before we move forward to the Oaklawn Handicap, guys, is there any final opinions on the Arkansas Derby, what it offered, anything that you're looking forward to moving forward?
I'm mainly excited to see Nadal progress. I really am. I mean, when you talk about a horse that might still have a little bit of learning to do in comparison to Charlton, I think he has more learning to do, and I think he's only going to get better.
It's scary, huh?
It is scary.
How he was able
like you said, he runs in spurts. He runs in sport. Horses that run in spurts like that, they're still trying to figure something out, and he's got ample time to figure it out before the first Saturday in September.
The last horse that I saw with gears like that in the stretch, I'll just say it, was American Pharoah.
Yeah.
The last horse that I saw that I felt like had gears like that.
I think unlike Charlton, he's not reliant either. I think he could sit any type of trip, and I think he's going to run his race. So that also bodes well.
Jack,
it was nice to see him sit off the pace.
Do you hate it, Jack?
It was.
No, yeah. I mean, it was very impressive. I'd agree with Cody that Authentic, Nadal, and Tiz the Law are kind of in the top tier for me at the moment in terms of the Kentucky Derby. I actually prefer Authentic to Nadal. I just do. It's just kind of they're obviously very close. I'm not sure if we'll see Authentic in the Santa Anita Derby or not. It seems, he had a few weeks off. He's back working, so I'd say it's very much a maybe. Yeah, Nadal was impressive. I think you guys. I mean, he got the perfect trip, but that's not a knock. And he was great. I found it surprising. They say that horse weighs 1,300 something pounds. That's really, really heavy. And I'm not. I mean, he's not
freight
that
train.
tall of a horse. He's not that tall of a horse, but to be the size he is and weigh that much and get around the track the way he does, he's got muscle on muscle, and that's incredible. Now, I will add, a heavy horse can sometimes be a little bit more unsound. He's shown absolutely no sign of that, so I don't think it's, Nadal's, he's going to get hurt. None of us hope that. Hope he stays perfectly sound. But if you were looking for some cause for concern, a heavy horse, it can be harder for them to stay sound, but he's shown absolutely no indication of that. He was ultra impressive, and, there's no reason to think he won't keep moving forward.
Thank you guys for the closing thoughts. Speaking of moving forward, let's kick over to the Oaklawn Handicap, which is the last of the graded stakes races that we've not covered. A horse that's moved way forward that really impressed the heck out of, I think, anybody that watched the race. By My Standards. Wow. Open discussion on By My Standards.
Great race. It was a similar race to his previous races down in New Orleans. Gabe Saez gave him a great trip, got him over from the 12 hole, sat off the speed, went by. I mean, that's great horse. I mean, he keeps doing the same thing, every time. And it's nice to see a horse consistent like that. So was that 3 for 3 for him?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, since his return, since the Derby, he's been 3 for 3. And we were talking about Nadal just seconds ago about how, he had a good trip. Horses like him and By My Standards, with that early speed and then that will to relax, they make their own trip. It's kind of hard to not have a good trip when you have a horse that will listen to you in that sense. And By My Standards just keeps showing that. And I think he's going to be a really serious horse. That was a loaded field. And also, Warriors Charge ran a huge race because that was the toughest race he's ever been in his life either. And he really fought on hard. So I was really proud of those two horses, especially because it was pretty clear to me that Mr. Freeze was running to them in the lane. It was odd that he didn't show as much speed, Mr. Freeze, as he usually does. Yeah. But I don't want to take anything away from By My Standards and Warriors Charge. They both came in with a huge effort.
I wanted to touch on that a little bit, Mr. Freeze and the speed. I know that some people maybe – I don't know why they would think that, but there was some flack about Talamo that he wasn't engaged early in the race, or he didn't send him, or he didn't.
He sent him pretty hard.
That's what I thought whenever I saw that.
He sent him pretty hard.
It was the first time that I've watched Mr. Freeze run where I hadn't felt like he was handy, and maybe he just didn't ship well, or maybe it was a little bit warm, or the humidity was different. But for whatever reason, he didn't seem to be as engaged early in the race. I think that he actually. Given that tells me that maybe there was something a little bit underlying to where, for whatever reason, Mr. Freeze wasn't on his best. Maybe it was a bounce. Maybe it was an external factor that we're not aware of yet. But I think that
they were pointing for the Godolphin Mile, and then you kind of got to redo all your plans from there. Then out of nowhere, you're showing up in the Oaklawn Handicap. You haven't run in 2.5 months, so he might have had a little bit of excuses. Then he was coming off his career best race. And maybe the mile and eighth isn't his best distance either, I mean, he had a lot of things working against him, especially with the break like that. But Mr. Freeze is still a very nice horse.
Yeah, and that's my point there is that with all the things that were against him, he seemed a little dull out of the gate. How big of a race was that? I mean, he was there, and he had every opportunity to come get him the final 16th of a mile. He just got kicked on by two really good horses.
Yeah.
Jack, Cody?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of – it was kind of what we expected anyway. I think in our preview, we kind of hit the nail on the head. There was a lot of Mr. Freeze, and there was a lot of By My Standards. I think we went Mr. Freeze, By My Standards, so we got the order wrong. But I think the way we talked about both is accurate, and I think they're both really good horses. By My Standard, it's nice to see him back. It seems something obviously went wrong after the Kentucky Derby. A race where a lot of people expected him to run really good. He didn't, and then had a lot of time off. But he's obviously back, and he's back as probably one of the best older horses in the country if he keeps going the way he's going and getting better. But yeah, it was a good race, and I thought By My Standards was very impressive.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that we absolutely hit the nail on the head in that race, and I know that Cody's got something to say about hitting the nail on the head in that race. Cody, you had an opinion, man. Tell us about that opinion. Remind us of that opinion and what you saw on Saturday.
Yeah, so I thought Combatant was a play against. I thought his races in California were overrated and weak. The horse that he beat 2 back before that race was running in the allowance race, and he ran up the track. I just thought he had some big numbers that weren't necessarily backed up with who they were running against. So he ended up showing
A lot of fluff.
Yeah,
A lot of fluff.
he ended up showing his true self. I was right about that. But I have an additional hot take about this Oaklawn handicap. If you guys will hear it out.
Tell me about it, Cuh.
So, by my standards, ran a great race. All respect to him. I thought he did exactly what he had to do. I just generally think Mr. Freeze is a great mile horse. I think that Warriors Charge ran a big race to run second, and by my standards ran a good race to beat him. But I think none of those three pose any threat whatsoever to Tom's Day Tat and the Stephen Fox or wherever else he runs next. So I think really, Tom's Day is much better than those horses.
Absolutely.
And
I agree with that.
is more of a Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile horse than a Breeders' Cup Classic horse.
That's a great take. Any differing opinions from that?
No, I think I agree with that. I think Todd's going to prove himself to be the top handicap horse this year. You know, we do have to see what happens with maximum security in the hands of Baffert now, and he has Game Winner and probably about 9 other horses that we can mention that he might have for the Classic. But his comeback race was so impressive, and actually the rider I represent, Miguel Mena, he breezes him a lot, and over the last 3 years he's been working him many times, and he told me before his Clark that this was the best he was ever doing. And then this winter in New Orleans, while we were down there as he was getting ready for his last stake race, he said, this is the best this horse has ever been. So he's only getting better and better. And I think Joel fits him really well. So it's going to be really interesting to see where they decide to do with him the rest of the year and, you know, how much bigger and stronger he gets with more racing.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they skipped this out. I thought that it was a pretty obvious point, but you know, Al, talk about that. What was that decision?
Al's he's just a very patient trainer. You know, we've seen that time and time again, and his patience is the very reason why Tom's Day Tat is still around at the age of 7 and competing at this big level. Because if you look at his, you know, lines, he had many breaks. Tom's Day Tat is a horse that, you know, they've had to try many different things to keep him sound and get him from race to race. And, you know, Al's doing a great job with him. So him skipping a race to me just says that he knows his horse and he wants him ready at the end of the year, and he's not too worried about picking up all the races in between. You know, he really thinks that he has a chance to win the Classic, and he's going to go and try to do it. Interestingly enough, this was one of the first horses that they ever bought, GMB Racing, and it's weird how long that Tom's Day Tat's been around because was it Motom? Who was the other horse that was in the Derby the first year? I think they bought him with Motom. I can't remember, but yeah, he's been around forever, and you know he's super talented, and they've always thought the world of him. It's just now he's really getting to show it based off all that patience and the time they took with him early on.
Thank you for joining us today. We're going to finish with our thoughts. We want to end on a high note and make sure that we hit on our favorite moments of the weekend at Oaklawn Park or anywhere else in racing for that matter. It doesn't have to be the stakes races. It could be a moment. It could be an undercard race. It could be a race at a different track that wasn't in the spotlight. Jose Abdon Santos, what was your highlight of the week?
My highlight of the week was I got to hang out and watch the races on right by like the half-mile pole. I was hanging out with Carson, my girlfriend, your father actually, and it was just really cool to see all the people lined up over there watching all the races from the half-mile pole to the quarter pole. People in Arkansas just love horse racing, and it was really awesome to see everyone go out there, and they didn't want to miss that big day, even if it meant just looking through a fence. So it was a lot of fun to see all that.
That's awesome. Nathan, what was your favorite moment of the week?
Oaklawn handicap, Gabe Saez getting by my standards over from the 12 hole. Just giving him a good ride, you know, sat right off the speed and put him in a good shot to win. Put him in a good spot to win. So
meant a lot for your double too.
Yeah, that was that little
favorite moment of the weekend for you, Nate. Come on, you hit $1,000 double.
All right, I've got to tell you the whole sequence then. Going into the late pick 5, I did not like Rushy in that first leg. and I had 7 pick fives starting in that leg. I was down 1 pick five right out the gate when Rushy beat me. So I doubled down on my opinion that Charlatan was the best horse, but there's no value in playing a 1-9 or a 1-5 to win on top, right? So my value lied within winning impression, the 9, and based on how the races were playing out, I figured I needed some speed to go along with that 9, so I included Gouverneur Morris. So I keyed those horses 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the Super under Charlatan, and hit 3 $20 supers for a total of $60, which returned $4,000. And then I went full degen and parlayed that on a $1,000 daily double on my next favorite opinion, which was by my standards, 2 Nadal. I was looking at the the probables before the race, and it was paying 13, 14 to 1. So there's plenty of value there for me. If it's paying 4 or 5 to 1, I'm not playing that, but I can get by with 14 to 1 in a double.
Yeah, you can.
Is that what you call that? A get by?
Yeah,
$14,000 cash?
I want to take a moment there because there's some people that haven't ever seen or heard those numbers, myself included. That is, you're right when you said full degen. But whenever you talk about a fan that separates fandom and gambling, I just want to take a second to talk about Nate. One day, Whitmore was running in the Phoenix Stakes off of a layoff, and we were there for my bachelor party last October. And Nathan came up to me absolutely fired up. I mean, he was just losing his mind because Whitmore was rolling. If he would have switched leads, if Rosario had ever ridden him before, we're there, we nail him, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, did you hit the super? Did you hit the exacta? And he was like, oh, no, I didn't hit anything. He was so excited, and I then found out later that he had $2,000 on his nose, and he was keyed on top of all exactas. And it had to be one of the worst beats I've ever seen. But this guy was just so jacked that he had ran such a great race off the bench and was excited to go on to the Breeders' Cup. That really said a lot to me. So I love that.
Fan of the sport.
There was a lot of energy that weekend.
There was a lot of energy
God.
Lexington.
That was a marathon. That's a true test of the champions. Chance's bachelor party.
Jack, tell us your favorite moment of the weekend, man.
Yeah, I'd have to say the fantasy. I thought it was just a great duel between 2 very good fillies. Love a good stretch battle. Love when horses dig in. Shows they're loving being out there and running against each other. So that was my highlight.
That's awesome. Don C.
So I've got 2. The first one's going to be our Archie-bred 3-year-old Man in the Can, winning the Arkansas Breeders' Championship on Friday, running a big race. And we're excited to see what he does going forward. A close
right to the 1X. Right to the 1X. 3 wins right to the 1X.
A close second, fittingly enough, was Bank It, rolling into second, and the exact surprise in that allowance race. We all knew it was coming, and that meant a lot to me personally.
Yep. Hey, Don C called that one. Even Money Don called that.
He did.
Even Money Don, he's calling it. You said the word personal, and I'll close us out with something very personal to me that was absolutely my favorite moment of the weekend. And I know that for the first time ever in the history of Oaklawn, and I know that the circumstances that we have certainly create some stories that have never before been seen in this environment. But there was some spotlights around a race called the Trails End at Oaklawn Park. And Jack called me. He was like, what is the Trails End and why did they run this race? Like, what is this? And I said, I kind of gave him a rundown on it about what the race was. And I then saw the same kind of story get regurgitated later as they signed off. And for those of you, if you didn't have the pleasure to watch it or you don't know what it is, I would strongly encourage you to put it on YouTube. I'll drop another link here. The Trails End is a race that just absolutely captures Oaklawn Park in a 20-minute segment. So the horses come out to the track, and the race is for horses that are eligible for $10,000 starter allowance races, which they're lower tiered horses. And it's literally written as the longest race of the meet because the intent of the race was to make the meet last as long as we possibly could. And so they put the slower horses at the longest distance. And then whenever they come out for the final race, the Trails End, all of the horses come out as normal on the post parade, and you'll see people slowly but surely start walking over to the rail, and it's normally all of the fans that have heard about it through the grapevine will come. And this year was pretty special because it was all of the people that were able to continue racing at Oaklawn Park. It was all of the help, the racing office, the valets, all of the attendants that stayed with them throughout the entire meet and kind of became the heartbeat for racing, the heartbeat for an industry. And really a lot of people in the nation had something to do on the weekends because of Oaklawn Park. And all of the horses then stop and turn, and they play over. The bugler plays normally. We don't have a bugler right now at Oaklawn, and so they actually played a recorded version this year of probably the saddest song you've ever heard that will pull on every heartstring that you have. And it's Oaklawn's Park. It's Oaklawn's way, the horseman's way of thanking the fans and saying, we're happy you came, and we can't wait to see you again. We'll see you next year whenever fifth season rolls around. And the reason why that's so personal and so special to me specifically, and I think a lot of people that grew up watching Oaklawn or go to Oaklawn every year, whether it be for business or for sport and pleasure, is that is symbolic of people leaving. And that is symbolic of a group of people that are moving on to the next thing. And so for me, that was my dad. That song every year meant that my dad, my family, and the sport that I love was transitioning away for the year. And it was an opportunity to sit back and remember and reflect all of the memories that the season had that had led up to that moment. And then get excited about all of the things that were to come for the remaining 2/3 of the year. And so the Trails End to me is just an awesome moment. It's an awesome opportunity to remember all of the good that a track did. It's an awesome opportunity to remember all of the storylines, all of the horses, and that really kind of crescendoed at the end with what can only be described as an awesome weekend of racing. I think this was an awesome show. The King's Court is out. We will be back next Saturday morning with a preview of something. Thanks.
Boom.